Book of Genesis, the book of beginnings. Amen. God bless. And to the 32nd chapter of the book of Genesis. Amen. The 32nd chapter of the book of beginnings. And when you have it, stand to your feet. We're going to lift one verse, just verse 30. We're going to lift just one verse. Genesis 32, verse 30. And we're going to work backwards if y'all don't mind. Amen. If you'll stand on your feet, rest on your feet, as church people say. The word of the Lord reads, and Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. Y'all may sit back down. Amen. I've seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. The NIV translation says it this way. It says, so Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, yet my life was spared. I want you to think for a moment real quickly about the most significant encounter you have ever had. The most famous person or the most significant person you ever met face to face. Think about it now. The most significant person or the most famous or significant to you person that you ever met face to face. I know immediately who it is for me. The encounter took place at City Place Mall. Praise the Lord, in 1993. Amen. I was at Muhammad Ali chicken, what is it? Not chicken and waffles, chicken and some old chicken place. Amen. And got a chance to meet Muhammad Ali and shake his hand. Shook his hand. I surely did. I did. And I will remember that forever, because he had meant something to me before I had an encounter with him. All this is, I'm preaching all right. He had meant something to me before I had ever encountered him, because when I was in the 2nd grade, I was the only little black boy in the class. And we had to write your favorite person. I wrote that my favorite person is Muhammad Ali, because he's black like me. And they called my mother and thought I had psychological issues. Because it said, well, 1975 for a little black boy to say he wanted to be a little black boy, that was psychological. Something's wrong with your psychology. But I remember, I always loved Muhammad Ali. I always admired him and the way that he conducted himself. The more I learned about him, the more heroic his deeds became to me. And so when I got a chance to meet him, stood in line for 3-4 hours, I don't know how long, hours. And I had a print that he was going to sign for me. He signed it. It's still my most, I don't know why I said the base or the office. Somebody has stuck it in there. But anyway, I remember there was a man in front of me, and I was moved. As we got closer to the chair, and there was a man in front of me, and we had been talking for hours. You can imagine me standing behind you in line for 3 hours, we gonna talk. And so he had similar experiences with the champ. And as we got closer to the champ, when his turn came, he had his son with him, little son. He put his son in a picture with the champ. Right? And the impact of the moment, this man was taking a picture with his baby and his hero. And you could see it was starting to get to him that my baby's with Muhammad Ali. It was getting to me too. I had been crying. I've been crying 20 minutes ago. We had been crying all the time. But then the wife, because you got to have, see fellas, you got to have a good wife. His wife took the camera from him and pushed him into the picture. Right. Only a white girlfriends don't think like that. That's right. My God. I didn't want to hear it. Wives, your wife recognized she caught a moment. She recognized a moment, and so she pushed him in the picture. And they all took the picture in tears. Everybody's crying. So I get up, it's my turn. And I go up to him, and I say, champ, you're my hero. I want to be like you. I said, everything I've ever done, you've been the leader of everything I've ever done. And then the champ said, well, you didn't send me any money though. Shook my hand and signed my picture and boom, got me on my way. But I will always remember that significant encounter because in some ways, it changed the way I looked at things. Muhammad Ali was a lot bigger than I thought. When he stands up, he was a bigger man than I thought. he was funnier than I thought he would be. Right? So I learned some things in my encounter with him. So I wanted you to think, I shared that with you, but I want you to think about your most significant encounter. And what would you call the place? Jacob, in verse 30 of chapter 32, Jacob calls the place Peniel. For he says, I have seen God face to face and have survived. Everybody don't want to see God. Everybody is not ready to see God.
Amen. Right.
Everybody's not waiting for Jesus to come back.
That's right.
Right. Some folk he need to delay. Some folk, Lord, take a couple more minutes. Some people in the church need the Lord to take a few more minutes. Don't, Lord, I'm not quite there. Let me get myself together. For some people, when the rapture comes, it's not going to be good news. So we got to stop telling everybody that the sweet by and by that we all going to be happy when Jesus come back.
That's true.
We have to make sure. And so Jacob knew that he should not be happy because he knew what he had done. He knew who he was. And that's why he said when he saw God face to face, he said, this place shall be called Peniel, for I have seen God face to face. And he spared me.
My God.
Didn't have to.
Yes.
But the significance of the event it wasn't only that I saw him face to face, but that he spared me.
My God, thank you.
When I saw him face to face. My God. So, good morning, Greater Bethesda. I'm sorry. That's what I didn't say that. Good morning, Greater Bethesda. See, Tria has started the whole. You about to be the praise and worship leader. All right now. Talk about she a pimp. You ain't a pimp. Anyway, so God is calling us this morning to talk about one of the things that is inevitable in our lives. Probably the most inevitable thing in our earthly lives. Now, all of you all are thinking about death. But the Bible, if you read the book of Revelation, it teaches us that when the Lord comes back, there will be some people who are alive and are raptured up to meet him. So just because you're on earth doesn't mean you won't get a chance to physically die.
That's right.
So death ain't the only inevitable thing.
Right.
The most inevitable thing in our lives is change. Change.
That's right.
George Benson, ironically, George Benson, who is the greatest, right, on the Muhammad Ali. He wrote a song that said, everything must change. See, we got to have some more years. Maybe y'all too young to know that song. Everything must change. He said, nothing stays the same. Everyone must change. Nothing can go, no one goes. That song is a powerful song George wrote. Now, the question is not whether we're going to change. Just look in the mirror. As the years go by, when did my hair? I can remember when I had made the decision to go bald. I was mad at my barber. I used to have my hair like Deke. All of a sudden I thought something was wrong with his light. It was light shining in the back. No, I'm going to tell you like that. No, that's not my light. That's the reflection of your Lord. Praise God. Things have changed. They didn't give me no announcement. Didn't send me a memo. Things just began to change. My suit size changed. Only one noticed was my wife. I told y'all that story. She was down in and I was kind of skinny. She had recognized the change and I had not. I recognized the change, praise God. Now, the question is not whether we're going to change, but rather how you're going to adapt to the change.
Yes, to the change.
The motivational speaker, Tony Robbins, says this way. He says, change is inevitable, but progress is optional. Progress is what you do with the change.
With the change.
How are you going to adapt to the change? See, the lion, I watch the not nature shows all the time. The lion is the king of his savannah because he gonna eat no matter what. Because he swims just good enough to catch fish. He climbs just good enough to catch monkeys up trees. He runs fast enough to catch the slowest gazelle. So he might not be the most of everything, but he's enough of everything to eat. I'm gonna eat every day. See, the cheetah's faster than me, but if it go in the water, he's not gonna eat.
That's right.
Right. That's right. The giraffe is taller than me, but if he go down low, you're not gonna eat.
That's right.
But the lion lion is adaptable.
Yes.
No matter what I got to do, I'm going to eat.
I'm gonna eat. Yes.
I'm going to eat. And so what's happening is the lion embraces progress. If the food moves, the lion moves. I'm not going to sit there and say, this is my hometown and I'm not leaving. The food has moved. All the gazelles that left. And you stand here because this is my territory. Right? A whole lot of us live our lives that way. This is my territory. And I'm not going nowhere. You'd rather starve on your territory than I'm not there yet. Many Christians live lives of frustration because we refuse to accept the idea that things change.
Yes.
People change. Feelings change. Attitudes change. And even seasons change. And we must be of the mindset to move with the change. Because again, progress is optional. The change is not optional. But the progress, amen, is optional. Harold Wilson put it this way: the only human institution that rejects progress is the cemetery. The only institution that refuses to change is the cemetery. Think about that. And so today, I want to talk about change. I want to talk about loose change.
Loose change.
Loose change. If I could, just in a few minutes. I know we got a communion, so I'm going to hurry up. Loose change. Loose change. Yeah, I'm not talking about the change in your pocket, loose change. You should call that. Your jingle money, as my daddy would say, your jingle money. And loose change. We don't have loose change no more because you can't buy nothing with it. Used to be 50 cents. You could go to 7-Eleven and get you something. Now, you might as well not even give them no quarters. They can't do nothing with no quarters no more. You might as well not give them no quarters. Amen. Loose change, amen. And so, the idea, how we look at change, how man looks at change. Right? There are many, many studies on change, as you know, and I pulled one from Boston University, and their theories on the psychology of change. There's a whole lot of things, but I picked 3 things that stuck in my head, how man looks at change. The first one, change is frightening. For most people, they get scared of change. The idea of doing something new. And because change is frightening, that makes us cling to the status quo, even if it's bad.
Wow.
An unknown evil is better than an unknown good.
My God.
Right? I know he's not no good for me, but I know just how bad he is. Rather than go out there and try to find someone new.
My God.
Because I'm resisting change. Change can be frightening. Now, for my educators, B.F. Skinner, he said, change must be positive to be permanent. Parents, my God. Change must be positive in order for it to be permanent. You can't beat nobody into behaving.
That's right.
Now, I'm not saying don't encourage. Continue to encourage their development. Amen. But it ain't going to be permanent. It must be positive because it must be reinforced.
Yes, that's right.
Reinforcement versus punishment. And that features the next one. The last one, being is easier than becoming.
Yes.
Being something is easier than becoming something because most people do not continue with processes that make them uncomfortable.
Yes, the process.
And so if I want you to continue, I should make the process comfortable for you. Huh? So that's the way man looks, some of the ways, amen, that man looks at change. How you look at change depends on what you think the outcome's going to be.
Yes.
Right? What you believe the outcome's going to be, therefore it's dependent on your understanding of the situation. But we as believers know that Proverbs 3 and 5 told us to trust in the Lord with all of our heart and lean not to our own understanding. You're in a sad place when you lean on your own understanding. Lao Tzu said the man who refuses to change direction may actually get where he's going. God forbid you actually get where you were headed. I'm glad God turned me off the direction that I was on when I was headed. The kindest thing he ever did to me was not let me get where I was going. When I was I was hell-bound to bound for hell.
My God.
And I thank God that he wasn't going to let me stay stuck on stupid.
Yes.
Because some of us, we just are on stupid and we enjoy it stupid and we're trying to stay on stupid. And no matter how stupid we are, can't nobody tell us nothing different. I'm glad that God didn't let me stay stuck.
Yes.
Hallelujah. God, so stupid. And then he said, trust in me and not in your own understanding.
Yes.
So that we as believers should not be scared of change.
That's it.
We can't be scared of change because we know that there is God.
Yes.
And as long as there is God, he's the author of the change. I wrote this down this way, right? This is the write down part. Believe that our authentic relationship with God will govern the changes in our future the same way it governs our present. God's going to govern the future the way he governs the present. He takes care of all of my needs in the present, so he's going to take care of all of my needs in the future. He keeps me from hurt and harm in the present, so he's going to keep me from hurt and harm in the future.
That's right.
They call that faith.
Yes.
Faith is not just believing that God can, it's believing that he will. And that he will do it for you. He will do it for me. And that's when my faith is activated, see? And so when I have faith in God, I don't fear the future. That regardless of the outcome, I know I'm going to be all right.
That's right.
Because God's going to take care of me no matter who the president is.
Yes.
Folk crying when Trump got elected. The same God that took care of me when President Obama was the president.
Yes.
Because guess what? He was taking care of me even when Obama was the president. It wasn't Obama taking care of us.
That's right. Same God.
It was God taking care of us. Now, if you lived a long time, God took care of us during Reagan.
Yes.
He took care of us in Nixon.
Yes.
Took care of us in George Washington.
Yes.
So no, the same God who took care of me back then will take care of me no matter who the president is. So I don't have to be resistant to the change.
Yes.
Amen. Because Ecclesiastes 3:1, one of these days the Lord delay his coming. Like my mama should say, the Lord delay his coming. Ecclesiastes 3:1 is one of the most powerful, and I encourage everybody to read it as many times as you can. Put it on laminated paper and put it on your wall. It says, to everything there is a season.
Oh my God. Yes.
And the time to every purpose under heaven. Then he goes on to list. To everything there is a season, and seasons change.
Yes, they do.
There's a reason for winter. There's a reason for cold and snow and hurricane. There's a reason for summer. There's a reason for spring. And to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. And so my question is, do you trust God to loose change?
I got it. I got it. Yeah.
So y'all thought I was talking about loose change. No. Because Matthew 18:8 says, what you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. What you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. So do you trust God enough to loose change?
Hey, thank you, God.
In your life, to loose mine.
Yes. Oh my God.
1964. They're going around the moon, or whatever, not the moon, they orbited the earth. The Russian dude named Yuri Gagarin, I wasn't there, praise the Lord. The Lord had not brought me there at that point. But Russian cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin, the first man to orbit the earth. When he came back, of course, he was very much celebrated, had lots of dinners and stuff in his honor. And he had the opportunity to meet a theologian at one of these dinners named C.S. Lewis, and who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. And Yuri Gagarin was also an atheist. He was an astronaut and he was an atheist. I don't see how those two go together, but he was. And so he came, as a matter of fact, the devil thought he was going to use Gagarin as his main pitchman. And so they come back to this dinner, and Mr. Gagarin meets Dr. Lewis, and this is, I wrote down the exchange. He said, sarcastically, to Dr. Lewis, he said, I've sailed past the sun, and I didn't see God. So how do you know he's up there? You ain't been up there. I've been up there, and I ain't seen him. So how do you know he's up there? Dr. Lewis responded and said, I don't know God because I can see the sun, but because his sun lets me see everything else.
Oh my God. Yes.
I said, get him, Dr. Lewis. Because the sun allows me to see
Oh my God.
all the other stuff. That's how I know that God is there. Not any one particular thing.
Yes.
But because I know that he's there because he lets me see everything else. The conscious expectation of God's positive intention is called faith. Please make sure, I'm going to say that slowly. Conscious expectation of God's positive intention is called faith. When I believe that God's going to do something good for me tomorrow and the day after and the day after, God's going to heal me. I may be sick today in my body, but I believe that God's going to heal me. I have a conscious attitude of his positive intention for me. So when you live by faith,
Yes.
you not only accept change, but you request change.
Yes. Amen. Amen.
You recognize and request change.
Yes.
That's why sometimes that song that I butchered and tried to sing, I'm no Tamala man. That's why I'm scared to sing it. If when I get to heaven, I'm going to sing like Tamala man.
All right.
Watch. Come up there and see as I go through it. I'm going to sing just like Tamala man. If I could sing, that's what I would say. When I meet Sister Man, one of these past anniversaries, y'all going to get Sister Man. Sister Man going to come and I'm going to say, Sister Man, if I could sing, I would sing like you, because you hit a note with a thing in your throat, and that's the way that I feel. The way you would do it with her. I'm not talking about the how, I'm talking about the that's the way because that song changed. She said, change me, oh God.
Yeah.
Hey, and make me more like you. Then she hit it, right? Change me. She meant that thing. And I mean it too. Wash me through and through.
Yes.
Create in me a clean heart. Oh.
Yes.
I'll be in the car crying. I don't know about y'all.
Yeah.
I got to see that. I'll be running the beltway crying. Hallelujah. Because that's my request. I don't mind change because I have faith in God.
Yes.
So God, if you see something that's not like you, change it.
Yes.
You the boss. If I'm saying something that's not aligned with your will, change it.
Yes.
Feel free. Give God editing rights in your life. If my marriage ain't right, change it.
Change it.
If I'm not talking right, change it.
Yes.
If I'm not thinking right, God, change me, oh God.
Yes.
Hey, not change for change's sake, but change and make me more like you.
Yes.
My God.
Hallelujah.
Now, I was at work. Thought of my KK too. I was at work, and this was Tuesday, I believe. And I heard a crying in the hallway. We have an atrium, so it resonated throughout the hallway. I come out the hallway, and there's a little kindergartner sitting in the hallway, little baby, just a cry. And the teacher's out there with him, the art teacher. So when I come, of course they think Mr. King means trouble. So the teacher's standing on point, everybody's on point. I come over, and I come down to the little baby. And as I'm coming over, the teacher begins to explain real quickly what's going on. She said, we're doing a project for the holidays where the kids are supposed to take a piece of paper and take some pasta shells, macaroni, and glue them on the paper. You know, arts and crafts, to do that, right? So she explained it to me, and she said I was modeling. She used all the terms. I was modeling. I had to put my paper in the middle, and I said, everybody take your macaroni and put it on the glue. And they did. Take it, and I had him do all this, and all of a sudden, he ran out the room crying. But right after they did everything, right? And so I get down on my knees to talk to baby, and I said, what's wrong, Chad? Did you get your pasta and your paper and glue? And he said, yes. And he's still crying. I said, did she give you a chance to finish? He said, yes. And he's still crying. And the bell began to go off in my spirit, right? I'm telling y'all, the Lord speaks to me the craziest times. So I said, why are you still crying? And he said, because I want mine to look like hers. Hey. And I began to think that song came back. Make me more like you.
Yes. All right.
I did everything that she said to do. I put everything down the way she said. But when I looked at it, it didn't look like her. And so we know right and everything and trying to console him and get him tight. But God, by then, God was twisting me around. I had to go back to the office. Because God said, son, I need my saints to say the same thing. God, I need you to make me look like you. I'm upset. I've been praying when you said pray. I've been giving when you said give. I've been trying to do all. I did everything the instructions had said. But when I look at my life, it don't look like you. And so I'm upset. I'm crying. That's why I say, change me, oh God. Hey, to make me more like you. I want mine to look like God. I want mine to look like yours. Hey, I'm not trying to be fancy. I just want mine to look like yours. Well, I'll move when you say move, and I'll do what you say do. But I just need mine to look like yours. So God, if my attitude is too big, cut the paper some to make it look like yours. If I have too much sticky glue on it, take it off. Do whatever you got to do. And so, my God, I asked the teacher before I left, what can we do to get the baby to stop crying? What do you think we should do? And she said, I will fix his. So the teacher took his and she began to touch it and construct it. And she gave it to him. And immediately, he stopped. And I was, by now I'm ready to shout in the atrium. I'm telling you, God is trying to get on me. Because when God takes your life, and he begins to move it. See, you have tried to do it, and you have thought you were doing right, and you have tried to put everything in order, but it didn't look exactly like his. So what you had to do was give it to the master. It ain't just enough to have the same ingredients, but I had to give it to him. Now you do it, Miss Jones. You do it, Lord. I know I read the book on how to be a good husband, but for my marriage, you do it. You do it. I was trying to eat right and all that kind of stuff, but you take my help. My God. And if I'm doing something wrong, change me. Change me, oh God. Woo. See, the desire of every believer when we come into the presence of the Lord ought to be to change. There's no way you can be in the presence of a perfect God and not recognize that you are not perfect. See, that's like a little baby. Until he saw the teachers, he thought he was right. He got his glue and everything. It wasn't even when he looked at his partner next to him. They was working that table. He looked at the little girl next to him. Didn't bother him. Looked across to his partner. Didn't bother him. But when I lined up, how many of us are living? See, the reason that I think I'm living okay when I look at my brother, because my brother's as raggedy as me. The reason, see, that's why we're seeking advice from the wrong people. We are seeking our trifling cousin, and we think we better because we're not trifling with our cousin. See, but he's a kindergarten like you. But see, when I hold up my life to the master, then I recognize that my lines ain't straight. Then I recognize that there's too much glue. Then I recognize that I put the whole thing on backwards. When I recognize, and so I recognize I need to change. Oh my God. So as a believer, now you see where we are. My God, Are you ready to lose change? Because Matthew 18:8 said, what you bind on earth is going to be bound in heaven. What you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So are you ready to lose change? My God. In your own life. It's a time now. God, I need you to loose change in my life. I need you to loose change in the way that I talk. When you get on my nerves, talk, not the happy talk. Just straight, right? Am I right? Yeah, we all say when you don't make me mad. Yeah, but you get on my nerve, then my salvation. But change me at that time. When you stole my parking space, change. Oh, man. When you took the last piece of copy paper in the copier, change.
It's a transit with Dallas went.
With Dallas went, change us. Oh God, change us. The Redskins do need prayer. Now, go back to Genesis. Go back to Genesis. Amen, please. The 32nd chapter. And jump, because I told you, Jacob called the place Peniel, which means face to face. And he called it that because it means I have seen God face to face and he has spared my life. The encounter that he had changed him. Start at verse 22. At verse 22. So at this point, y'all know the story. We talked about the story earlier. Talked about Jacob and Esau. And how Jacob he had tricked his brother Esau out of the birthright. His brother was going to come kill him. And this was at the point when his brother was coming to kill him.
Yes.
Right? And he knew that. And Jacob had taken all that he had, all his great wealth, his servants and his oxen and all that stuff, and had begun to run away. He realized he couldn't outrun him, so he was going to come back and try to trick him, try to give him a treat to placate him. And it was at that time that we get to verse 22. And he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the brook and sent over that he had. Stop right there. Verse 22 and 23, very important. He's moving eastward. He's in eastern Palestine, and he comes to a ford or a brook, a stream, what we call a creek in the neighborhood, called Jabbok. Right? Jabbok, we made up a term. We didn't know what it meant, so they said it meant the place of wrestling. But Jabbok was an interesting piece of water because it was about 6.5 miles long. It went from Mount Gilead, from up in the mountain, down to the Jordan. And sometimes you could see it, and sometimes you couldn't. Sometimes it was covered up with brush. Sometimes the water went underground and came up. So it's just like life. This brook had a lot of twists and turns and bumps and angles in it. Just like life presents us, twists and turns and bumps and angles. And so Jacob now faces life. He's standing at the place where he has to wrestle in life. Right? And he was asleep. And the Lord woke him up. He didn't know it was the Lord, but he woke up. And he sends across all his family, because that was part of the plan.
Yes.
Right? He was going to send his family across first to butter Esau up. And so he sent them across. He was still doing the plan. Even after he heard from God, he was still doing the plan. Just like the little boy, I can imagine the kindergarten teacher tried to fix his while they were doing it. Teachers, I know, we try to help the child before he fails. So mama, stop calling and saying, why you ain't call me? We tried to help the child before he failed. That's right. So he's still trying to do his own thing. At this place of wrestling, still trying to do his own thing. And then verse 24, and Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day.
Oh, yes.
One of the things the Lord lifted to me out of this piece of text here. Remember now, Jacob thought he was still doing his thing. He was still trying to fool Esau. He wasn't trying to meet God. The Bible didn't say that he was alone. It said he was left alone. That means this encounter was unintentional. Jacob did. God deals best with us in unintentional situations. God can deal more mightily with you sometimes in your kitchen than in the church.
Oh, absolutely.
At a place where you don't expect to see God, that's when God shows up and is more relevant to you.
Amen. So true.
Now you can stand up here in the pulpit and we can dance and shout in the church and have one and be swept up in a sense of feeling. But when you're in an operating room and God show up.
Yes.
When you're in a courtroom and God show up.
Yes.
When it's unintentional. You wasn't expecting him. It's one thing to be alone. It's another thing to be left alone. The Bible says that Jacob was left alone by himself. Have you ever been left alone to wrestle with life? I told you he's at the place of wrestling of life, and so now I've been left alone. Daddy left me at my Jabbok. Mama left me at my Jabbok. Brother, sister, whoever it was that I thought was going to be with me on this journey has gone on without me or gone in a different direction, and now I am left alone. Not by my own design. And so it says, in the midst of that, a man appears. The Hebrew word is Ibish, meaning the presence of God. Ibish. God appears and they wrestle. Abak. That means physically wrestle. There's some people are trying to say that they had a mental conflict. That he was praying and this was actually no, it said that he actually wrestled. God physically came in a situation. I'm here to tell Greater Bethesda, make sure that you know that the God that we serve will physically come into your situation.
Amen. Yes.
We're not speaking just theories here. We're not speaking just theology here. I'm talking about the God who will come and stand in the way of a sliding car in the snow so that it won't crash.
That's it. Amen.
God will physically come in the situation and he will hold bullets back at go-go's. I'm going to tell you, he will come in to your situation. If you don't, there's got to be some testimonies in here where you don't know why. But
Thank you, Lord. Thank you.
He will come in. And so after they wrestled till the morning time, he called for Jacob. The man said, that double talk, remember from Bible study, I was in Bible study. See, when God says talks double to you, right, two reasons. One, we said, was for self-examination. When he said, Adam, Adam, wherefore art thou? Or Moses, Moses. That first Moses is for you to self-examine.
Yes.
What am I doing? Where am I? Who am I?
That's right.
Well, that first one, that's what you want you to look. Where are you? Who are you? That was for you. But the second one is for divine recognition. Who am I? First time I say Moses is who are you? Second time I say Moses is do you know who I am?
Right.
And so he says, Jacob, Jacob.
Oh my God. Thank you, Lord.
Jacob, so you know who you are.
Yeah.
Now, Jacob, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
And so Jacob, by himself, unintentional, right, has this encounter with God and has to go through self-examination and divine recognition while he's at this forward. Amen. And so we get here to verse 25. When he saw that he prevailed not, meaning that when the angel of the Lord, or the Lord saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh.
Yes.
And the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. He knocked his hip out of joint. The angel of the Lord, when he saw that he could not get Jacob to turn him loose, the Bible says he touched Jacob's hip, and Jacob's hip was out of joint. And for the rest of his life, he walked with a limp.
That's right.
Right? He goes on to be the father of the 12 tribes, but he still had that limp. Because guess what? Like I told y'all before, to break free of the things that bind him, freedom is bloody business.
Bloody business. That's right.
Freedom is bloody business. Don't never forget that. It don't just happen.
That's right.
And so even when you break free from the bonds of Satan, it's bloody business.
My God.
And so you might be hurt in your encounter. You might be inconvenienced in your encounter. If you want God to change you, it's going to hurt a little bit.
Yes.
Because I told you way back in 2015, y'all might not remember this, that which does not challenge us can never change us.
That's right. Amen.
If it's too easy, it's not going to change you.
Right.
And so Jacob had to get whacked pretty good to remember the encounter that he had.
Oh my.
Right? And so many of us would have turned around and left. As soon as you hit him on the hip, he said, all right, that's good, I'm out. And he'd have limped on away. But go to verse 26. After he hits him on the hip to try to get rid of him, and he won't go, the angel says, and he said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And Jacob says, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me.
Yes.
Wait a minute. So now Jacob has had a change. I told you the three things that man thinks about, right? We say we're frightened by change. So now Jacob was no longer scared of this man, right? We said change has to be positive. He was positive that this man could help him, right? And then the last part, he believed that it was easier to be than to become. So he decided, I'm going to become a follower of Christ. I'm going to give myself away. At this point, God changed me. I could almost hear him hitting that Tamala Man note as he's holding on to this angel. And the angel, the only blessing that he has, the only chance that he has, he's all by himself. He can't lean on nobody else. And so the only chance that he has, he's holding on, and the chance is trying to get away. And he says, no, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. No, God, I'm going to stay right here until you bless me. No. I'm holding on to the horns of the altar.
Yes.
And I'm not going to let go. God says, I can't bless you till you get to that point.
Yes.
I'm not going to bless you till you get to that point. You keep asking me, but I can't give it to you. I will not give it to you until you are desperate for me.
My God.
Till you don't have no plan B. Till you're all alone by yourself and you're holding on and you feel like it's slipping away and you're grasping and saying, I won't let you go until you bless me. See, Jacob had changed at that moment. Right? At that moment. So then 27, he said unto him, the angel says, what is thy name? And he said, Jacob, deceiver, supplanter, tricky. That's my name.
That's what it means.
Right. He said, what is your name? And then 28, he says, thy name shall be called no more tricky, but prince, commander. For as a prince hast thou found power with God, with men thou hast prevailed. So because you had an inward change, there was an outward demonstration.
Absolutely.
I'm going to change your name because you changed inside. God's saying, I'm going to change your marriage when you change inside.
My God.
I'm going to change your health when you change inside. If you want success, you got to change inside. You got to flip that thing around. And of course, what God's asking today, are you ready to lose change?
Yes.
Everybody wants to lose cars. Everybody wants to lose houses, lose profit, lose prosperity. But nobody wants to lose change.
My God.
So God says, are you ready to change? If I was to take everything away, if the change meant you got fired from your job, do you still want change? If the change meant I told you to go to a faraway place, leave your family and friends, do you still want change? If you have to go through periods of loneliness, do you still want change? My God. I'm about to close. Now, verse 29. Verse 29. Jacob asked him. Now, he's already been blessed. He should be shouting. You've been a deceiver all your life, and God has changed your whole life around, changed the whole trajectory of your life. You should be saying, thank you. But I think Jacob was African American. Amen. Because sometimes folk who should be saying, thank you, get smart with you. Have you ever had some, on the bus, have you ever had somebody who should be saying thank you?
Yes, sir.
Get smart with you. Change us, oh God, at that point. Because you know you don't be thinking same. That's how you know you're like, Lord help. Tina, oh, bless us. Keep working with us, Jesus. Verse 29, when he should be saying thank you, Jacob asked him and said, tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name? And he blessed him. He didn't tell him his name, though. He just blessed him. Right. He blessed him. And I began to think, God, why is it that you never told Jacob your name? Why did you bless him? And God said, because there's still, in order for there to be faith, there still has to be some questions.
Wow.
God, see, there's still, even, I don't care how long you've been saved, part of your testimony still got to be, I don't know how he did it, but
Right.
I don't know why. Hey. I don't know who did. I can't figure. I don't care how long you've been saved. Still got to be a little part of your testimony that you can't figure out.
Yes.
Hey, so I'm not going to tell you my name. I know you blessed me and I know you changed my life, but I don't know your name. Because my understanding is limited. And so God is saying, I got to leave a little bit. So this particular one, I'm not going to let you know his name. When the scholarship comes, I'm not going to tell you why you qualify.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you who was the benefactor.
Oh, yes.
My God. Jacob called, and so after he goes through all this, he blessed him. He has his name changed from Jacob to Israel. He still has faith because he still got some more questions. Then he says, and he called the name of this place where this happened, Peniel. Because I have seen God
Yes.
face to face. And he has spared me. Who is at the place, at the PDL place in their life where you've seen God face to face now? I've been through a whole lot of trouble that I made myself.
Yes.
See, I gotta be real, I'm closing it. A whole lot of people, we like to cry over stuff that was not our fault. Right? Daddy left, that was not your fault. Right? You grew up poor, that was not your fault. And I get it. So we cry, why do I have to go through that? And I understand. But what about them things that was your fault? Some of the trouble we in is trouble we made. Let's be real. Some of the trouble we're in is trouble we made. We didn't have to go off for them.
Yeah, that's right.
Nobody told you to skip classes to put out of school. You did that. And so you deserved what you were getting. Like the thief on the cross told the other one, we deserve, we supposed to be good.
We know what we did.
We know we did it. It is true. Thou hast spoken truth.
Yes.
Right? What about that thing? Have you given that to God? That when you was wrong and you knew you was wrong, we don't like to talk about that. We want to talk about Daddy leaving.
Yes.
And that's fine. I'm not trying to minimize Daddy leaving.
Right.
Not saying that. I'm talking about when you had to do 60 hours of community service because you were shoplifting. Ain't nobody tell you take that thing.
That's right.
If infos wasn't yours. Then you go home tomorrow, because I'm poor and black. No, you were stealing. See, and we started to change definitions. We started to change definitions. See, that's why I love Deacon Baptist. If you didn't pay for it, you stole it.
That's right.
You went to the store, put it in your pocket, walked out. Just because didn't nobody catch you.
Right.
Did you have one of the mamas who would make you take it back? Where you get that?
That's right.
From the store? They ain't say nothing though. Carry it back. Carry it back. Put more. It's stealing. It's stealing. Carry it back.
That's right.
We got to be them kind of parents some more.
Yes.
We got to stop accepting everything and expecting God to bless our house. We got to stop accepting everything that's coming in the earphones of our children,
My God.
in the phones of our children. Turn loose here.
That's right. Right.
See, understand. We're paying for these things on our bills. God knows the bill is big enough.
That's right.
So we need to examine, not just for parental sake, but so that spiritually we will not let cursed things come into our home. So if something got to change,
That's right.
Do it.
maybe our children have to change.
Yeah.
Maybe the phone plan needs to change. Maybe your curfew needs to change. Change me, oh God. If that's what it takes to make you more like Him.
My God.
Maybe I need to change my work schedule. I might need to change something to make me more like you.
Yes.
My God, are you willing to change, to take everything up?
Yes. That's right.
In my house, Lord help my house. There is a wonderful chocolate queen in my house, whom I adore. Everybody knows that. But she has decided that the family is now on a diet. Now, when I was on a diet, oh no, cupcakes and everything was in the house. Now that someone else is removed, we got sugar-free ketchup, everything. And then she want to make my lunch. She made my lunch. My wife, I'm going to make your lunch. I should have known. Triscuits. Lord Jesus. But I have to embrace change. The reality is, I got to lose weight. So I have to embrace change. It's nasty, but I got to eat it. It is that. Yes, Lord, it's nasty. Eat it anyway. Amen. God is saying in the spirit, that's the way we need to be. It might be hard, but I need to do it. My kids might be uncomfortable for a little while, but I need to do it. My boss might not understand, but I need to. It might jeopardize my opportunity for promotion, but I need to do it. I got to change. Huh. Y'all stand to y'all feet.
Amen.